What is the point of a website? Is it to connect other people with content, or is it to share your own experiences with the world? Is it a bunch of useless pixels, or is it pixels with some sort of arbitrary value? With web design and enough creativity, you can achieve things that can confuse and fascinate people for long periods of time. This way of web design is called net art. It's a genre of art that uses the internet as a canvas. It's often very chaotic, with repeating images and unorderly design mimicking early 90s blog websites. It's rare that you find a piece of net art that isn't those things, but when you do, it can be something really special. NobodyHere.com is one of these such websites. It's basically a rabbit hole in a website with nearly 200 clickable links that lead you to other pages, but unfortunately it's often disregarded as a strange website to put in a list video and nothing else. But I don't see it as that. I much rather see it as a work of genius. And in this video, I will go over just what makes this website so special in the first place. Let's begin. In 1991, Tim Berners-Lee officially started operating the World Wide Web, an endeavor he had been envisioning for more than a decade. It wouldn't be accessible by the general public until 1992, but when it did, it had a growth no one would have ever expected. Companies began to take notice of this rising trend. News outlets started reporting on it. Some saw it as a fad, while others saw it as the future. So they packed their bags and went on their PCs to explore these interconnected networks. It wasn't as vast as it was today, but you still had a ton of things to do. The internet at this time was a lot like Patagonia, barren, unexplored, with much variation in vast area, but it still has a few million-ish people. The internet also gave ample opportunity for people that wanted to be famous, but this video's subject isn't one of those people. In 1998, a Dutch artist named Joachim Niemersverdrijd started operating a small online diary called Messages from Joachim. Starting out with a few dozen or so pages, this page was not quite like the other websites at the time. Like, yes, you had pages with no visuals and more text, but somehow, this felt more personal, literally random thoughts, with not much relation like most online diaries. While the website grew, so did Joachim's skills as an artist. The UI changed from just a page with clickable images and text to an actual UI with an image of himself. Pages slowly started having more interactive elements, almost like a whiteboard being slowly filled with hundreds of drawings. But people still couldn't really find it if they weren't Dutch, since the host was still on a Dutch web hosting site. So in the new century of Y2K, the website moved to NobodyHere.com. With it came an English translation. But this English translation wasn't one-to-one, as it was more visual than the Dutch version, meaning much of the Dutch version had to be sacrificed because of its more text-based quality, making a clear divide between two versions. And with the moving of his website came the perfect opportunity to use a newly popularized animation program, Adobe Flash. This program would turn out to be extremely helpful in turning Joachim's ideas into more of a visual form.
Why do you think people come to your site and keep on coming back?
Well, I keep wondering that, but people do. It started out being linked from other literary sites, basically because it was only text, and then later on I got more and more bizarre sites, and once I had an audience and enough links, other links would follow from sites I never heard of, like the Happy Little Girls page has a link to me. From intellectual.nl to bizarresite.nl, a strange range. I have some banners on sites that really pull in the audience. Right now I'm going to promote the site on English pages, so I expect lots of people to come to the English part in the future.
But that's the only way you promote your site, just by going to other sites and telling them about yourself.
That's the best way, going on the net itself and finding similar people, because I've tried an exhibition. It was a total failure, because you can't just put a website on display on a computer. It's just not meant to be that way. That's just not my medium, I guess. The site's growth was pretty unexpected, with many people resonating with Yakchem's plight, much to his surprise. People also wanted to talk to other people about this, but they couldn't really find a way to do it. So, when Yakchem noticed this, he created the guest book, basically an online guest book for people to leave their messages, a way to leave your mark that you came here. The Cave of Hands is a cave in the far reaches of Patagonia. The cave features a lot of cave paintings of scenery, animals, and other people's hands. And just like an unnamed user in this thread, they lived lives. You will never know them, of course, and neither will they, but they are still bound by the feeling you get when you look at them. That's why this guest book is such an amazing way of looking at how this one small website developed a huge overlooked community. Yakchem was overwhelmed, but actually kind of happy, because for once, he felt like he had someone else. With the growth of his website, Yakchem sort of became an internet hero, one of the many legends of his time that, despite being sort of underground, still had a large following. He went on panels, he did interviews, his work was studied by actual professionals in the literary field, but despite all this, he kept going. He kept adding more things, he removed the guest book and replaced it with a similar place for books to gather around, his site got translated to Japanese, and he won a Webby Award. But something would jump in to end this high, once and for all. And it wouldn't be an event, or anything else for that matter, but rather a changing landscape. When the Spanish reached the cold grasslands of Patagonia, they saw that the local inhabitants were a lot taller than the Europeans at the time, and so they made up a myth that the local inhabitants were actually gigantic humans. But as they depopulated the region of their native inhabitants and repopulated it themselves, they quickly forgot about the inhabitants. After a few centuries, they finally managed to turn the largest desert in South America into an actually livable place for others to settle in. With the internet, this had happened before with Eternal September, but now that Web 2.0 was around, the user-generated content and published content became equals. And so, many people started using the web for the first time. With this new revelation, user forums and many old web standards began to slowly but surely disappear. This new landscape was just not meant for the web of the old. Old websites seemed strange, weird, and unusual. What made sense then stopped making sense now. And unfortunately, NobodyHere.com was a site that got this strange feeling in people. While still being appreciated by the people that found it all those years earlier, newcomers had a harder time understanding the website. Most people nowadays, when exposed to the site, claim it's strange and unnerving. By 2010, the website's peaking popularity had been far gone. But just like a cockroach being alive after his head being cut off, Yakchem kept going. Even after the general public forgot about his website, he kept adding new pages, and he even made a few new social media accounts. He was still active even after all this time, as late as 2018 even. Just goes to show that even after something stops being relevant, its creator will most likely keep going. Why do we call NobodyHere.com a strange website? Well, this actually has quite a straightforward answer. It's because people themselves are strange. Human thought is hard to understand even when you are the most sociable person. You can manipulate people into thinking you are a good person and vice versa, but it's genuinely hard to actually know what a person is feeling just by sight alone, which is why NobodyHere.com feels so alien in the current web landscape. It's a way of expressionism that got more and more indecipherable with time, but despite this, the community is still very much alive, sharing their feelings about the pages and even sharing their own literature, keeping this website up for the foreseeable future. And even if he hasn't been active for a while, like most early internet users, Yakchem is still out there, roaming the streets of Amsterdam and still thinking his strange thoughts. One can only wonder, what is he thinking now? But there is one last thing to talk about before we end things, and it's something that has occasionally popped up in my previous videos that I didn't go fully in depth on, and now is probably my best chance on covering it. So, These two are the only archives of Yokchim's Flash-related work on the Internet Archive. Most of them involve objects ranging a tower and falling apart. I say archives because, as most of you may know, Adobe Flash stopped being supported in December 2021, and with it came down millions, maybe even billions, of Shockwave Flash content. People were notified of this soon happening in 2020, and as such, they got to work in archiving as many sites as they possibly could, but this archival of things was not perfect. And it just so happens that a random Reddit user would ask a simple question on the Flash subreddit. Does anyone know if NobodyHere.com was archived? It was a super cool art Flash site with lots of poetry and little animations. It was mysterious and intriguing. I loved it. The Wayback Machine snapshots are kinda broken. It's the kind of site that doesn't lend itself well to being archived. Perhaps that temporality is part of its point. Things fade away, cultures go away, languages vanish and people disappear off the face of the internet. Everything we take for granted in life is momentary in the grand scheme of things. So remember, when you move into your new home next time, try to think of how many people were there before you. No matter how much you feel like a nobody, others complete you and turn you into, well, somebody. No matter how much you don't know about them. Whether we like it or not, there's at least some sympathy to be felt for NobodyHere.com and Yokchim. And with hundreds of pages, you can perhaps see a blurry vision of yourself in the sea of links. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you for what was season premiere.